Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome in to the DFS Minute, brought to you by the one, the only, DFSArmy.com, your one-stop shop for all things daily fantasy sports, NBA to MMA, whatever it is that I usually say. We're going to dive in. We're going to talk a little bit more NBA today because I'm getting a lot of questions regarding setting up domination station. Was getting them in PGA this morning, was getting them in the beginners forum, was getting them in the NBA rooms a little bit too, and of course several DMs from you guys. So I kind of figured, how am I going to do this? And the easiest way to do it is to show you what I do. I'm not going to pretend to be a pro. I'm not going to pretend to even know what I'm doing. I lean on the coaches as much as you do when it comes to NBA because they are the experts, and I'm just playing along just like you. But I think that I've got a head on my shoulders and can probably talk you through the process that I use when it comes to tweaking ownerships because that's what everybody seems to want to know. Um, let's pretend that you went through the and one rating system at the very least when it comes to the research station, or you can find it at the domination station. You would say FanDuel, main slate. Scroll down here. One little thing to keep an eye on is right there. There's the high game total of the night, and I'm going to focus on this game. If I can, or at least look and see if the domination station's forcing this game on me. If so, I'll let it keep doing it. Another thing that I've noticed, and I don't do this yet. I'm slowly adding steps to my own process, and I know these are things I need to pay attention to. The high total of the night, maybe looking for a little bit of big spreads, and maybe letting the thought of blowout enter my mind just a smidge. I know we don't predict blowouts, but that's a bunch of crap. Blowouts happen, and if you can predict them to a certain degree, you can adjust your exposure a little bit in MME formats where maybe you're taking a little bit more of the guy than you would otherwise do, or maybe you're taking a little bit less, etc. Kyle Kuzma is a good example last night. I'm going to look at the late game and maybe want to see some more exposure to that game in there if there are good plays, because in NBA, as the slate wraps up, yes, you do nothing but fall backwards down a leaderboard. You've got to get there, but if you do get there, it's a little disheartening to watch yourself climb backwards a little bit. These are things I'll think about. Maybe they'll enter my actual process, maybe they won't, but they're things that I'm definitely, planning on thinking about and seeing if there are opportunities to incorporate them, not at the risk of blowing up everything that I do and completely shifting my priority to late night hammers. That's not what I'm going to do. Um, but my default setup here, would probably be 18, 19, 20 points, something like that. Probably, 50 lineups or so. I love running 50 lineups in nickels. It's such a cheap way to have fun. Shift it to tournament mode down here to a couple of unique players, bigger slate tonight, probably three, maybe even four. Kick over to server for a faster mode. I'm not going to mess with randomization just yet. And actually, I'll probably just do four uniques, cut it down to about 20 lineups, click optimize first, let it run. Because what I want to find out is who it likes. Who does the domination station like? And while we're doing that, I will go through with you the list that I had. Last night was names like Bledsoe, Harden, Devontae Graham, Malik Monk, Giannis, Eric Gordon, um, Jeremy Grant, whatever. His news was questionable. I left him in. Zion Williamson, PJ Tucker, Nikolai Jokic. Those are the guys that I highlighted on my list. I've got a list of 30 players or more, and that's the list I highlighted from. Those guys did fairly well last night, um, based on the and one rating system. I put, a couple of lineups in the top 1%, 11 in the top 5%, 28 lineups would have cashed quintuple ups, and 47 of my 50 would have cashed double ups. So I would say my core or my general player pool did pretty well last night. Tonight, on the point guard side of things, we'll scroll down here. We'll kick over by and one rating. We'll sort by that, and we'll get down to the players and the percentages that it just threw in a little bit. But we're looking at names like Trey Young, Chris Paul, Dragic. Teague jumped up one. This must have updated. Kemba was in there. Looks like Kemba's not in this player pool, so maybe he's questionable, maybe he's not. So I'll probably cross him off my list because I was looking at the RS, the research station before. That's probably where Teague jumped up a notch, and then Reggie Jackson. So these are the guys that I would probably start slapping adores on. what I'm wanting to do is they're the best plays in the field. I'm wanting to separate them. What I'm doing is watch his value at a 4.44, bang, up to a 5.1. Now that may not be enough to pull him into my lineups, but at least it gives him a fighting chance if I trust my research numbers, right? Kyle Lowry, Colin Sexton, ADVP is a little bit weak. Probably ought to do some of these guys, but I don't know exactly where I would go yet. So, these are things when I get kind of down towards that and don't really know what to do. That's when I'll rely on the coaches. But my, Wiggins, D'Angelo Russell, Shy, Dinwiddie. This is a good opportunity to go back to Dinwiddie. Last time he burned us by having a pretty bad game. Uh, D. Russ is already in there. Booker, Butler, where are they? So Levert all of a sudden appeared in there. All right, I'll throw him up there. Booker up there, and there's my top 6, right? This is how I'm going about it. I know they say top 5. You can do 7. It doesn't matter a whole ton. But I'm just going to go through here as quickly as I can. And I already see a name like a Kelly Oubre that I'm not a fan of. He's okay for tournaments, but I'm not going to have a ton of exposure. If I see it give me 50% of him, I personally am not a fan of the guy. So I'm going to probably bring that down a smidge. And I had a Kogi on my list and not well, Hunter was on there too. So, and see, I'm making this a big list, and it's probably too big. Who was not on there? Burks was not on there. If Burks is in the coaches player pool or whatever, then I'll reinsert him. But of the research station, these are the numbers that I saw. Maybe it's updated again, maybe not. But I'm just going down. So if you're doing this with me, you're doing the exact same thing I'm doing. It's the only way I know to show you and talk to you as I go through here and kind of get you doing the same thing. Not because I'm some pro, but just because it's similar to what the articles are telling us to go do. You might watch a Draymond Green. Somebody, if he runs point tonight, you might look at this number jumping. These things will update, in the next couple of hours as we get closer to lock. But all I'm doing, like I said, is just sorting through the list. Adams, Jokic again. That might be even a back-to-back night. Vucevic, whatever. So now that I've got some of these guys set, right, on the way, and that's about all I'm going to do. You might see other guys that you like and whatnot. But I'm going to come down here and I'm going to start looking. Who are the big guns? Who's it really love? Because I left it at 100%. Loves Karl Anthony Towns. That's fine. He's on my list. I'll probably have to squash his ownership a little bit. Porzingis is on my list. Dinwiddie's on my list. Levert's on my list. Culver's not on my list. So that's interesting. I may have to go look at a coach's note or something to see what they say. Why? I didn't see it on the research station in the and one category, but they are seeing it. Because the domination station is running projections off of a lot of what our coaches are thinking. We make our own projections in-house. We're not taking them from some other source like a Fantasy Cruncher or something like that and just running them as our own. We are actually making our own projections in here, and that's partly what separates us from the field. Trae Young is in here, Reggie Jackson's in here, Chris Paul's in here, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So now that I know who the domination station is really going to like, I pretty much agree with it, other than I need to do a little research on Culver. I can come back up here, kick it back to all. And on a bigger slate, I might want a little bit more spread, so 70%. I mean, if you want to do 75%, that's fine too, whatever. Totally up to you. Cut these uniques down a little bit to tighten my core up a little bit. See, if I've got 4 unique players, it's only going to repeat 5 through every lineup. If I've got 3 unique players, it's going to repeat 6 for every lineup. If I have 2 uniques, it's going to repeat 7 for every lineup. If I have 7 of the same lineup, if the domination station really loves these 7 guys and they fit in the lineup salary cap wise, then those are the 7 guys that are going to show up in damn near every lineup that I do all night long. And if those 7 guys have a great night, I'm set up to have a great night. But if those 7 guys, 2 or 3 of them falter, I'm going to be screwed across the board. So if I'm trying to expand, diversify a little bit, spread out a little bit, then the way that I can do that is cut that core down. Instead of 7 or 6 or 7 guys, I can cut it down to even 5 of the same guys, or even 4 of the same guys, and start really spreading it out that way if I want. Okay, I like a kind of a middle-sized core. Now I will go down to 2 on short slates. I'll go down to 4, up to 4 on 12 and 13 game slates sometimes. It really just all depends on what kind of where you want to get freaky with the machine. I will add in a little bit of randomness. 5%, 10%, somewhere in that range, 6%, whatever. That's not going to matter much because a 10% range is going to take this 56 or 60 points, let's say, since I jacked him up here, 60 points. That 10% of that is 6 points. So he's going to range anywhere between 54 points and 66 or 67 points on every run when it builds a lineup, and then it'll rerun, it'll rejumble, reshake, re-Yahtzee the projections, and then it'll come out at 62 points, and then it'll come out at 57 points, and whatever that's going to translate to one of these value numbers, right? 6.93 or 6.89 or 6.74 or whatever, and that is what's going to compare to other positions, other places, other players on your roster, and then the domination station will prioritize based on value. All of a sudden, it'll pull somebody else in. If Karl Anthony Towns comes back at an 8.0 value, then it's going to pull him into your lineup as one of those first 4 or 5 players. But if he's a 6.4, then it might choose 4 guys ahead of him. He may still be the 5th man into your lineup, therefore he shows up in the next lineup again, but he may not, and he may get faded off completely. Okay, I've got an exposure cap here at 75%. And from there, I'm going to start tweaking based on the ownership numbers once I rerun this optimizer again. Now, I'm only doing 20 lineups just for speed, just to show you guys how this might end up working out. Because once it gets to 75, and that's what tournament mode is for up top here, if it doesn't jump on me, tournament mode doesn't make, optimal mode would take Karl Anthony Towns and put him in the top, say 12 of 20 lineups, and then okay, well, now we can only deal with the crap that's left over on your bottom, and your bottom lineups get really, really weak. Tournament mode tends to kind of take that into consideration as it's building. Oh, we're getting a little heavy on Karl Anthony Towns, we need to tone it back a little bit, and then 3 lineups or 4 lineups later, it goes, oh, you know what, we can start using him again, and so it starts mixing those guys up a little bit better. That's partly what you're using that for. So now when I come down here and I look at these 20 lineups, I see that nobody's in here over 75%. I've got a lot of guys that I need to start playing with. So if I go to point guard, the guys that I like tonight myself for whatever reason were Trae Young and Reggie Jackson. So if these are the guys, I might leave Reggie here at 60%. Trae Young at 55% might be fine. Chris Paul at 55%, that's okay. Mike Conley, if I wanted more of him, if I want less of him, I would do this. If I want more of him, I could do this, put him in 20% of my lineups. If I wanted him in 30%, I could just force him in 30% of my lineups. If that still didn't work and I came back and ran the machine again and it didn't have him in 30%, I could do this, and believe me, it'll put him in 30% of my lineups then, and it'll cap him at 75. So I could do this and stick him exactly on 30% and just throw his projection through the roof. That is a pretty specific thing to do, though. I don't know that I would recommend that. Gordon Dragic, again, in only 1% of lineup. Now, if I get news later that he or my coaches tell me that he's in a great spot and he's liable to test his ceiling tonight or whatever, I may come back in to the optimizer and I may change his projection. They may change it for me and tell me to refresh my projections, in which case I'll do that, and then I'll just click optimize and leave all of my settings the same, all of my adores, everything the same. I may go in and slap an adore on him and then rerun it. I mean, there are just different things you're going to have to do to play the game to catch up that I can't guide you through every single step. You're going to have to take some of this on yourself. But as you gain experience with the machine, you gain experience with building these lineups, then you're going to start seeing where this process, if you play every day, you just do the same things over and over and over again. And then, maybe on Wednesday, you change one thing and then run it through Thursday or Friday and see how it keeps panning out. And then maybe next Monday you change one more thing, add something else to your process, or take something out of your process. I don't want to pay attention to that anymore. Whatever the case may be. So if I go over here to shooting guards, Wiggins, for whatever reason tonight, I liked him. So see, now I would want him up here closer to that 75% range. He's 40% on the field. I'm at 40% on him in my lineups. If I want to go overweight the field on him and bank on him having a good night, I need to do a couple of things. I can force him into my lineups. Like I said, I can force him into some of my lineups. He's already in 40% of my lineups. I could take his projection. It's already juiced, but I could juice it even more. He'll show up in there again. And let's say I don't want him in more than, say, 60% of my lineups. I just change that. And what we'll do is we'll rerun this, and we'll see if he shows up in 60% of our lineups now. Levert, still fine. Dinwiddie, still fine. Like I said before, Dinwiddie's in a good bounce back spot because he burned us. So maybe you like that idea. You don't have to have the best players all the time. You just have to have the players that have the good nights and get them a little bit lower ownership in these tournaments. And that's what's going to give you the leverage over the field. If Dinwiddie has lower ownership tonight because he pissed people off 2 nights ago, and he has a ceiling game, then you're going to get him at lower ownership than you should have had he had the game he was supposed to have 2 games ago, and everybody would have still been on him. Now at 30%, Dinwiddie's not going to be exactly low owned, but this gives you, say he would have been 40%. At 30% now, you could take him at 40% or 50% and get a leg up on the field instead of having to take the gamble on him when he's at 40% and decide whether or not you want to take him to 60, 70, 80% to get leverage on the field. So you don't have to go quite as all in on Dinwiddie tonight because nobody likes him. His ownership's a little suppressed. So if I go to shooting guard, Wiggins is 60% now. He was at 40% or whatever. Now he's at 60%. See, I jacked his projection up and it got him right up to my cap at 60%. If I wanted to make it 55, I could do that. If I wanted to make it 70, I could do that. If he was, getting way up too high there, then I can tone this back down a little bit. There's things that I can do and things that I can tweak and adjust and play with. You see what I'm saying? That's what I care about. That's how I'm using this machine. That's how I'm comparing this to projected ownership. I mean, we're going on 15 minutes. I'm not going to show you my whole player pool, but I'm going to go through step by step with all of these guys. If I like more Shai Alexander, Wiggins is going to be chalky. Personally, I'll give you this tip and then I'll end it with this. Wiggins is an up and down type of player. If he runs the point tonight, he's got a lot of different ways to score points, so you've really got to pay attention to that. But if Wiggins is an up and down player in his game logs, you might consider fading him when he's ultra chalk at 40%. You might consider coming down here to 25% of the field, or like it was before, matching the field. I might do that. And then that gives me room, since he's not going to be in 60% of my lineups, that gives me room to come up on Dinwiddie even more. Or that gives me room to take a shot at like a Shai Alexander. They're supposed to be in what was a blowout type of game that's scoring okay. So maybe Shai isn't used the whole game. But what if that game's closer than is predicted? So what if I take Shai and I put about a 10% boost on him up to about, what would that be? 53, 54 points? And what if I want to force him into a little bit more than the field? See, I got 17%. I want to be overweight the field at, say, 25%. Say I want to be really aggressive at 30%. Anywhere between 30 and 70%, I'm okay. Let's say 50%. Anywhere between 30 and 50%, I'm comfortable with. Throw his projection through the roof. He'll land in this range somewhere. Rerun it. See what happens to Shai. See what happens to Wiggins since I changed him too. We'll see what happens to as a result of those two. But now what I'm trying to do is take some advantage of the lower owned Shai because he's in a blowout. That's going to scare everybody. And if I think that the game, if I'm taking a chance on the game being closer than predicted, all of a sudden Shai might be used right to the very final buzzer. He might end up with a ceiling game, and at lower ownership, that gives me leverage on everybody that was afraid to use him. So I would throw him in a percentage of my lineups. See, now that brought Wiggins all the way down, which is really interesting. He was at 40% when it was at 48 points before. Now he's at 20%. So if I wanted, and at a 40% cap, half the field, I'm probably still okay with that, unless I find out he's running the point. If I find out he's running the point, I'll put him back up to 50, and I'll force him into about 30% of my lineup so that I'm not too underweight the field on him, and I'll give him a little range. But Shai jumped up to 40%. He's right in between the 30 and 50%. Levert and Dinwiddie are still, at the top. Now, if I want somebody like a Levert, I want to say I just want a little bit triple the field. That just freed up 10 or so percent for Chris Levert to get in to the mix with some of these other players and maybe it brings a D'Angelo Russell up or a Dinwiddie up more, whatever. You keep playing with it. You keep figuring out what these percentage caps and what playing with these percentages are doing, and start asking yourself the question, am I okay with that much of the guy, or do I want more, or do I want less, or what? That is what's going to create unique lineups. along with a little bit of randomization, a little bit of uniques. That's what's going to create unique lineups for you, night in and night out, honestly. And you're going to be able to live with. See, now all of a sudden Levert's down a little bit, Dinwiddie's up a little bit, Wiggins is still in there at field average, and Shai is in there at double the field. A couple of guys disappeared. Jeremy Lamb popped in there randomly at one lineup. I don't know. That I might not like that. If I don't like it, I uncheck him, and he won't appear in the next lineups. But this is the kind of stuff that you do when you're really starting to trigger things. Another little tip for you: if you wanted to make 20 lineups, and throw it in a DraftKings, 20 max, you might make 25 lineups instead. Now you can go down here, you can optimize those lineups. Let's say you've got all your settings right, you've tweaked everything right, and this is what you want to see happen. And you're okay with pretty much any combination of things that spit out across those 20 lineups, because you've got about just about the percentages of the player pool that you want, the players in your player pool that you want. So you're going to let this run about 25 lineups. Neat little trick is to now instead of sorting by fantasy points, sort by total percentage ownership. Bring the chalkiest lineups to the top by ownership percentages. 291. Tournament, fade. 284. Tournament, fade. Fade. Just fade the top 5 chalky lineups. Now, I've got my 20 lineups for my 20 max, and they are the lowest owned of this batch of 25. It's another neat little trick to do. There's just so many things to do, and if you're not a VIP, you don't know this stuff because you're not in there asking us questions and talking with us and getting these tips. If you are a VIP, ask us these questions, bring these tips out of us. We'll keep showing these videos. We'll keep talking about this sort of stuff. Hopefully this is enough to give you something to go on tonight, and then you can do the rest with your own lineup, put in your own thoughts, put in your own adjustments, complete the player pool yourself, whatever it is that you need to do, and build yourself stronger and stronger lineups. And do it on the cheap. Do it way under budget while you're messing with things, while you're learning your game and whatnot, and then start ramping it up once you get a routine that you're comfortable with. You start seeing some, consistent success a couple of nights a week. You have pretty good nights, or you're grinding up a profit pretty consistently. These are the types of things that make you a better player, and this is the type of stuff that we coach inside DFSArmy.com. So if you want more information, you click the link down there in the comments section and use the coupon code CHOP, CHOP, get a 20% off discount every single month. Come inside, start asking us these questions, and start becoming a better player yourself. And for those of you that are VIPs, I will catch you guys on the inside. Take care.